Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and it's been a while, hasn't it? Well, who am I? I'm Mark Littler. I am the owner and editor-in-chief of the Whisky Wash, and I also have another company in the UK called Mark Littler Limited. And this is the most anticipated video of the year normally for this channel, and it's where I share my top 3 whiskey investments for the year ahead. Yeah, we're in June. I know that it's been busy. I took over the Whisky Wash in December, and yeah, it's quite a lot of work. But you know, 250,000 to 500,000 visitors per month, it's worth it. So if you're interested in learning about whiskey news, reviews, stories, etc., head to the Whisky Wash. Now, before we get into the picks for my 3 top whiskey investments for this year, look, let's get a few things set, and let's set the context of the markets at the moment, because basically it's a car crash out there. In the whiskey investment market, the markets are terrible. But stay tuned for this channel for another video to kind of see how that relates to the rest of the markets out there. And you know what? If you're watching this and thinking, this doesn't sound good, like why would I buy whiskey now? This isn't for me. Brilliant. Get out. Don't buy. You know, whiskey investing is inherently risky, but there's one thing that you can do to safeguard yourself, and that's have the right horizons, people. So don't expect to be able to buy any of these bottles today and flip them for a quick profit, which is what used to be able to happen for a very long time with all of these whiskey investment markets. Now, the flipping era is gone. So if you're buying these, don't make them assuming that you're going to make a quick profit. Buy them almost like generationally. Buy them now for your kids and let them take the profits 5-10 years time or whatever. And all the picks are really best suited with that sort of mindset. Now, again, these are all retail purchases. So I'm going to do another video actually in a few weeks' time about my best auction picks of the year for investment, but we're just looking at retail. So if you just want to look on a retailer's website, find something to buy and go and buy it, this is a video that you need to watch. Now, the first video, goodness me, it has been a while, hasn't it? The first bottle pick for me this year, it will be no surprise to many of you, and it was in our list last year as well, it's the Macallan 18-year-old Sherry Oak, but this time it's the 2024 release. Now, I have a particular affinity for the Macallan 18-year-old. I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, 2020, there was a story about a boy whose father bought him a bottle of Macallan 18-year-old every year for his birthday, and then he ended up selling it for just close to £50,000, the collection. We sold that collection. It was Matthew. We sold his collection for him. And you know what? The 18-year-old series is perfect if you've got a little child. I started this for my boy in 2018. And every year, you know, the 18-year-old Sherry Oak, it's the Sherry Oak that you want, not the double cask, it's the Sherry Oak. It's about £350 a bottle at retail. Now, my son was born in 2018, so I've got the 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. You know, it's a great little bottle to buy and build up a collection. So when your son or daughter turns 18, you could have 18 bottles all ready for them to either sell because the markets have done incredibly well, or, you know what, worst comes to worst, you can always enjoy them and drink them. But for me, the Sherry Oak is probably the best pick in the Macallan range for me, the 18-year-old Sherry Oak. It's, you know, the 12-year-old is £70, the 18 is £350, and the 25-year-old is a couple of grand. Now, not many people have got £2,000 to spend, and performance-wise, the 18-year-olds have always pushed a little bit ahead against those modern 25-year-olds. They're also very well presented in these beautiful black cases, and there is the chance people still think, despite what the market data is telling them, you can buy these bottles and flip them in an auction. So you will be able to find these 2024 release of the 18-year-olds at auction for a little saving over retail. You could probably pick one up at about £280, £300 hammer, but by the time you've added commission on and you've added shipping on and you've added insurance on, you're probably going to be creeping up to that £350 RRP price. So I would say, for me, just go and buy it retail. And again, don't expect to flip this, but it's a solid contender, a really solid performing bottle. And let's not forget that the 18-year-old series by Macallan is one of the longest standing age statement bottles that have ever been released. So the next bottle on my list is another one that we've done a full in-depth video of on this channel, so I'll put a link to it below, and it is about the Dalmore Luminary series. Now, they've just released the Dalmore Luminary series number 2. Now, if you remember last year, the first collaboration, so the Dalmore Luminary series, it's about bringing master whiskey makers at Dalmore together with incredibly talented craftsmen in their own sphere. Now, the first one worked with the architects who designed the V&A in Dundee, and of course, a load of profits from this go towards the V&A in Dundee. Now, the first one was an absolute success, and to be honest with you, they've done relatively well at auction, the Luminary number 1 release, the 16-year-old, because there's 2 parts of this Luminary series, which I quite like. So you've got this first super mega incredible bottling, and this year the Luminary number 2 is in collaboration with Zaha Hadid Architects, probably one of the best architect firms in this country, and they make some incredibly iconic buildings, some of which I'll put on the screen now for you. Now, the first one of this series, so the Luminary number 2, there was a 49-year-old Luminary number 2 released. This was sold at Sotheby's, I think it hammered at something like 95,000 pounds. It's just a huge sums of money in this big extravagant bottle with all this glass and everything around it. Now, obviously, that is out of reach for most people, and all of those profits went towards V&A in Dundee. Now, the Luminary number 2 series, the cheap one, it's limited edition. It's 20,000 bottles, so I'd argue that it's perhaps not that limited. But again, it's another really nice collaboration because it is forming part of a series. So you've got the Luminary number 1 from last year, the Luminary number 2 this year, and then the Luminary number 3, I believe, will be coming out next year. Now, this one, it's a slightly different whiskey to last year. It's a 16-year-old. It's finished in Graham's Tawny Port casks and Apostles Sherry casks as well. So it's a really, well, anyway, head to the Whisky Wash if you want to see the review for that, because we have reviewed those on the Whisky Wash and they're fantastic whiskies. Now, Dalmore as a brand, if you think of Macallan as Rolex, you know, everybody, you turn up to a party with a Rolex on, everybody will know what watch you're wearing. Think of Dalmore a bit like IWC. Now, IWC and Dalmore, you know, even though Dalmore were the kings of the whiskey industry for a long time, I think through the early 2000s, they held all of the world record prices at auction, and not Macallan. So IWC and Dalmore, they're a little bit more subtle, but they're both at the pinnacles of their achievement. And yeah, they're slightly more subtle, but they're still making their own waves, but perhaps not in as much of an outlandish way as the Macallan do. So the Dalmore Luminary number 2 is something that is definitely on my list, and at £275, it's fantastic. And yes, you can go and buy the previous year's one at auction as well as the future releases. Now, we get on to my third and final pick, and we've gone a little bit more expensive, but not as expensive as we went last year. And this time, this bottle hasn't even been released yet, but I absolutely love it. It's called the Ardbeg Y2K, and it's £670. Now, again, stop. If you're thinking about buying this to flip it, just stop. Just stop what you're doing and leave. Like, these bottles are not for flipping. I can't emphasize that enough, but I like Ardbeg. Ardbeg is a cool brand. Why is Ardbeg a cool brand? Well, they're a bit more like an American style brand, or have been like an American style brand for a long time. Why? Why do I say that? So in America, it's more about the brand than the age statements on the whiskies. So for instance, the Buffalo Trace Distillery feeds about 17 of the biggest American whiskey brands out there. And it's therefore what the brands are able to do with the whiskey in terms of their marketing and outreach that determines their success. And this is a bit like Ardbeg. So the Ardbeg had a bit of a checkered history in terms of closures and things. And it was closed through the early 1980s and 1990s. And it was purchased by the Glenmorangie Company in 1997 and kind of brought back to life again. So why is it like a brand? It's because they've not had many high age statement whiskies to make bottles with or to make products with, you know. And this is kind of getting to an interesting point in Ardbeg's history now. It's a bit like Bruichladdich in that respect, in terms of that we're starting to see age statements coming out. And this Y2K bottling by Ardbeg is a 23-year-old. Now, Ardbeg have dominated the marketing of their no age statement bottles And it's no surprise when you think that now they're owned by Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. So right at the top of the ownership chain of the Ardbeg distillery is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. They know about luxury and they know about the direction that they're going to take this brand and how to get it into the mega high net worth clients. And you know, it was last year, was it last year? Or was it the year before? We saw a cask of Ardbeg sell, a single cask of Ardbeg sell for £16 million. World's most expensive cask of whiskey ever sold, and that was sold directly by the distillery. So they do have these very high net worth clients. Now, this Y2K bottling, look, I've got a soft spot for the millennium. I was born in 1985. I was, 16 at the time of the millennium, or give or take 15 at the time of the millennium. So I've got nostalgia for the early 2000s, punk rock or like pop punk, skating, whatever. I loved the early 2000s. I loved Nokia 3310s, and I just kind of loved the simplicity of it. So this is a bit of a nostalgic release, but look at the quality of the packaging on this bottle. For £670, you're getting a 23-year-old Ardbeg, incredibly packaged. Now, they have said that it's limited edition. They've not really said about how limited edition it's going to be. And there are other 23-year-olds out there, like the Ardbeg 20-something 23-year-old committee release. That's another one that's out there that's the same age statement. But for me, this one, it's ultra cool packaging. It's probably, they've not confirmed or denied it's going to be a one-off or not, but I'm pretty certain the Y2K bottling, like to celebrate that, can only surely be a one-off bottling. And I think for the presentation and for the price and the age of the whiskey, you know, let's not forget that the Macallan 25-year-old is £2,000. And yes, this is 2 years under that age statement, 23 years old, but it's it's expensive still at £670. I do feel like it is a fantastic buy. It's going to be out around mid-July, and I think you can register on the Ardbeg website now. But it really is a stunning bottle, and that is why it is coming in to my top 3 investments of 2024. So there we go. There are my top 3 investment bottles for this year. Now let's go back to that caveat at the start. They're not for flipping. Goodness me, please people, don't flip these. But they are great bottles for long-term holds. And you will notice that they all have a few attributes in common. They all have, one, a high age statement, 12, 15 and above. They're all 16, 18 and 23 years. That adds to the scarcity. The majority of the market is for lower age statement bottles. They're all in incredible packaging, especially the Dalmore and the Ardbegs. And finally, they all have this, all of the distilleries are in the very top. Those 3 picks are relatively safe picks from distillery wise. I would argue that the Macallan is the highest risk in some ways because the Macallan is like the Rolex, it's already omnipresent. Ardbeg and Dalmore, with more marketing pushes, could come in and overtake Macallan and take this limelight from them that they have achieved. Strangest things have happened, and I do think that will happen over the coming years. So there we go, the top 3 whiskey investment picks for 2024.